Let's go to Joaquin. King, you still
Okay,
out
well, of
there?
course, the first thing that happens is my air compressor kicked on because I was blowing the dust out of my face mask.
Oh, we can't,
So
we
thanks
can't
for the
hear it.
reminder,
So
Sue. Um, just go ahead and get this thing on out of the way. Okay, I'm going to talk about stretching boards today. A friend of mine does flat work, cutting boards and the like, and he had a stack of boards that just weren't up to snuff as far as selling. And so he said, "Hey, you want to take these? I'm not going to do a lot with them because they're just not what I need to, for selling at craft fairs." And I said, "Sure, I'll take them and see what I can do with them." Now, one of them, I repurposed and turned it into the lid for a pet urn for a friend, and that worked out really beautifully. But um, Dan came to me and said, "Hey, we need a demo." And I was talking to Steve over in Ireland, and he said, "Why don't you do a bowl from a board?" And I said, that's a good idea. I think Mr. Burt does them. And also the source I use to learn about this is the Papa 1947, Gary Asher. He's in the Facebook group. I don't know. I don't see him on meetings very often, but he is absolutely an expert with the bowl and the boards. He's also an inventor. He was a pattern maker after he got out of the military. And so I really, really recommend that you go to the Papa 1947 on YouTube. If you want to learn about this, I'm going to show you some simple things that I learned from watching Gary. So what I
Yeah,
have, I've
he
already
was my
spent a little
inspiration
time.
as well, Joaquin.
Okay, yeah, I love watching Gary. I've had a phone conversation with him, and he's a really neat guy. Um, really neat guy. So I have this is half of the board. It was 11 by 24 ish, and it's 3/4 inch. And this may be interesting. This piece isn't as bad. You'll see what I'm talking about in a few minutes. But what I have here is walnut, zebra wood. Unfortunately, this is cedar. And then I've got I think that's sapele. I've got some more zebra wood. Looks like more sapele, purple heart out here, and maple. So we're going to have some varying densities. So there is a distinct possibility that we could have a failure tonight. I want to warn you right now. I will be wearing my face shield, taking all the safety precautions I can, but this strip of cedar is treacherous. So I want to warn you ahead of time. This could completely come apart just because the cedar is 1/3 the hardness of anything else in this glue up. But I like a challenge, so we're going to try it out. I put this on the bandsaw. I found center. So the way that I recommend starting this is that you have to have a way to hold it. So I found center, and then I went to my bucket O cutoffs. Capnetti talks about all the time. I actually have a 5-gallon bucket. It's almost full, and it's about time to start the next bucket. And this is just a little piece of cherry end grain cut off. I've got a tenon on it, and I want to center it here. So in order to do that, I need to see how big it is. We are just at 2 3/4 inches. So I am going to use this center finder. But you can also just use a compass and set it up with it as well. This is just a little bit simpler if you use the center finder, and I'm going to give myself a circle. And again, you can use a compass or break your prep pencil lead. That's the only thing I don't like about the center finder. It's why I usually don't use it, is it eats pencil lead. Um, but I'm going to draw myself a circle. And then in order to attach my waste block, I am going to use a little trick that I learned from Lyle Jameson. Lyle Jameson talks about how much he sees people trust hot glue, and he makes the point in his ABCs of bowl turning class that hot glue flexes. So his choice is thick CA. So we're going to put a nice dose of thick CA on there. We're going to this is flat. I made sure that I turned that flat. We're going to hit that with an accelerator. And we have about 3 seconds of time to move it around. So you really want to try and make sure you eyeball that really well and get that centered because it's going to freeze up in a second. But this is going to set quickly, and hot glue is CA glue is very, very effective at holding a blank. And at the end, I'll show you how to get that off so that you can finish the bottom. I also like to hit accelerator around the edges. Capillary action will suck it in. And when you see it was still moving a little before I hit it around the edges, as soon as I hit it on the edges, that froze up and that's not moving anywhere. We can give that a couple more seconds. I'm almost out of Starbond. I need to make another order. We'll leave that a couple more seconds here, and we'll get it up. Now this tenon and waste block is end grain, so you can crank it down and get it really good and tight, and you're not going to worry about things like shearing or anything like that. And then this is a trick I learned. Again, Gary Asher and Phil Anderson over on the West Coast, they're buddies. And Phil teaches this trick. Turn your lathe on. Mark Soleil shows this too. Turn your lathe on and advance your center, and that lets your live center center. It actually, your tailstock's locked down and your live center will center. Now we're a tiny bit off, and that's due to some sketchy bandsaw work. And I do this all the time. I do this rookie mistake all the time. And so I'm going to show you everything not to do. I forgot to get my banjo outside of the piece. And this is about 11 inches across. So I don't have any room here on this little 12-inch lathe. So I could just mount it out of the chuck, but I've got it where I want it. I've got center, and that could mess up my center. So I just pull the whole chuck, slide the banjo over, and just put my chuck back on. I think it's just a little bit easier to make sure that you keep that square. And also, while I'm messing around with this, I'm giving that CA glue just much more time to set. It really sets pretty quickly, but if you can give it about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, you're going to have a guarantee of a better bond and less chance of it failing. Although I have yet, and having watched Lyle Jameson, I guess it was a year ago, I took that little class, and I have yet to have this fail. It works really well. But as you see at the end, it's going to boggle your mind because this will snap right off. It's got great lateral strength, but it has zero shear strength or minimal shear strength. There's a little bit, but not much. So we're back. We didn't lose center. We're still directly in center, and we can begin turning. So the first thing we're going to do is just make it round. And then I made a jig modeled after Gary's jig, but I don't have metalworking tools available to me. So I used the woodworking tools available to me. Boy, I really cut that poorly. We'll fix it. I used the woodworking tools available to me, and I made a bowl in a bowl jig. So we will get into that in just a second. And let me move the camera. Sorry. This is wider than I was expecting. There we go. We're getting a nice even cut, even though we're coming across multiple species of wood and multiple densities. Just take your time and take a nice and slow and take small cuts and have a sharp tool. And that's nice and round. I get a little funky dooley bob there. So we'll go ahead and take one more pass and straighten that rim out. Okay, nice and round. Now we're ready to start working on our bowl and a board. Now, again, Gary is absolutely the authority on this currently that I'm finding videos, and he made a really neat little metal attachment to a box rest. I don't have the metalworking tools, so what I did was I took a block of oak and I ran it across my chainsaw or my table saw at about half the depth, and I cut a 45-degree slot. And I don't have a narrow gauge parting tool. Gary uses a very thin Sorby parting tool, which is beautiful. Uh, I don't have a narrow gauge parting tool that is that strong. So I'm using my quarter inch Sorby parting tool. One thing I will tell you is if you have a thinner parting tool, it will work better. And you can get a little bit wider passes. So this is at 45 degrees and I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but there's a couple of different tools you can use to make sure your angle's right. You can make some little just little cut out little jigs at 45. I'm still, because I have to mount this with the clamp, I've got some problems making it fit. The other thing you can do is use a compass of some kind. I've got this little guy, which you can set at 45 and get in there and you can get closer. There are so many, you can take your T-square and line it up. There's so many ways you can make sure you're at 45. Don't get too buried in, oh, that has to be 45 degrees. Get in the range of 45 degrees. Now, the other thing is, and this is where I really appreciated Gary, because he did the math and the calculations. If you cut each ring at 45 degrees, you get a conical shaped bowl. You get a funnel. You get a conical shaped bowl. There's nothing wrong with that. They make really cool fruit bowls. But if you want to make a rounded bowl, we're going to end up changing the angle. So something to think about, and that's what we're going to do tonight. Freshly sharpened. We're roughly, I don't like to tell people what speed to turn things at. We're at roughly 800 RPM. I tell people, turn at the speed you're comfortable and feel safe turning. This generates a lot of heat, especially since I'm running between so many different species of wood with different densities. And the worst is the cedar. You can actually hear the cedar heating or smell the cedar heating up as you do this. Cedar's not a wood I generally like to turn because it's so cranky. It's so soft and it likes to crack. And that, by the way, for you Brits, Steve turned a piece the other day of actual cedar. Here in the United States, most of the cedar we get, unless it's specifically something different, is juniper. Western red cedar is juniper. So it has some characteristics. Spanish cedar is an actual cedar and turns completely different than juniper cedar. So I'm not a big fan of turning cedar because it's so persnickety. But it's what's in this board, and it was a free piece of wood. And if it's free, it's for me. So one trick that I do is, you can see we're just piling up. We've got this little flat surface, is just hit it with a little air. That also helps keep things cool. Take your time. And as you'll see in a few minutes, this is probably the slowest part of this process.
Plenty of time.
Now I'm also fogging up. Temperature's dropping out here. I apologize if I stop and let my mask clear. So you can get much, you can get more. We may or may not make it to the third angle. You can get a lot more with a narrower parting tool. I just don't have a narrower parting tool that's strong enough to do this. Use a tool that you know is safe. I definitely know that this 1/4 inch tool isn't going to flex on me. My homemade narrow gauge parting tool would wrap up and break my fingers. You also can, you always want to make your parted piece a little bit wider than the tool. You can see I can swing this. You see I've got a little bit of give here. I'm hitting that edge and I can hit this edge. So I can keep that cut just wider than my tool so it doesn't bind up. That also helps reduce the heat a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I've found that this goes faster if you just take a quick pass just like this, rather than trying to just bowl through and let it keep going and let it keep going. The heat builds up. It'll start to smoke. I don't know if you just saw that, but there's a puff of smoke. And it'll actually distemper the burr and the cutting edge on your tool. So you can also rock your tool a little bit back and forth like this. Again, the point is making that cut wider than the tool so the tool doesn't bind up. So when you, if you make a little block like this, you want to make it just a hair wider than the tool so that you can keep the cut a little bit wider than the tool. And you just rock it back and forth just like that. And that just gives me just enough width that that tool isn't going to bind up. The air also helps cool things down. All right, we're almost through. We're a little past 3/4 of the way through. A good time to stop and check your depth. We're just about there. We've got about a 3/16 of an inch to go. So probably about 3 more passes and we'll slow the lathe down to roughly 600 RPM. Because when this comes loose, it's going to be spinning. And we don't want it to get caught up on the chuck and tear up and snap, which is a potential that the ring could just snap on you because it gets caught on the chuck spinning at 900 RPM or whatever. And I probably could have taken this a little faster, but I'm comfortable right at 800 because I know I did, well, you'll see, I did one that's already glued up so we can turn it to a bowl. And the cedar was challenging. Okay. You can start to hear it. Sounds like you're driving down a gravel road. When it gets real thin, you can start to hear that. Not sure if the mic's picking it up for you guys, but it's starting to sound a little bit shaky. So we're going to slow the lathe down. And I've got a good, this is really anchored solid. 2/3 of the tool is in the slot. So I really don't need my second hand in there. So I put my left hand on the stop button because I need to stop this lathe as quickly as I can when it comes through. Almost there, but we're getting that build up. Clear that out. That cedar's the worst. Most of that dust is cedar dust. We're almost there. Very close. All right, I'm starting to get dust instead of shavings, which tells me I've lost the burr on my little tool. I just come in with a 400 grit diamond stone and just pull it about 10 times. And should renew the burr. There we go. That burr is what's doing most of the work. That's doing all the work. We see we're getting shavings instead of dust again. Come on. There we go. Stop the lathe. Carefully catch that and stop it. We're through. That's our first ring. Now, here's where you need to make a decision. You saw when I had the banjo on the wrong side, I went ahead and pulled the whole chuck and just put it back on. You have to take this off in order to figure out where you're going to put your next ring. So my choice at this stage is to go find, I'm using the 1 and 1 marks on my chuck. See that. I'm using the 1 and 1 marks on my chuck. The new Nova G3s have a dots instead of numbers. Apparently we've lost that much literacy. But I go ahead and just color in that gap with pencil or a Sharpie or whatever, where the chuck fits between 1 and 1 so that I can line it back up. Pull my ridiculous little tool rest contraption. It looks silly, but it works. There was a saying in the military, if it looks stupid, but it works, then it's not stupid. And we're just going to go ahead and pull this out because we need to set this down so that we can line up for the next ring. Move you back over. Just like
Joaquin,
that.
what size are you cutting those rings at? 3/4 inch?
quarter, the first ring. So because of the design of my little tool, the first ring is an inch wide because I can't get my banjo for any further out. The beauty of the tool that Gary Asher made is that he can it literally stands on the tool post on the tool rest, and it's about this long, and you can rotate it so you can actually get that all the way out to the extent of your of the edge of your lathe and just turn it in the direction. This makeshift tool that serves the purpose makes it pulls cut it stops me. If you look when I put it in my rest here, I'm limited by the edge of my banjo as far as my banjo goes out. So I would whoops, sorry, I would absolutely, were I able to, if I had a little more room, I would do a half inch or even a quarter inch width here, because that's would be the rim of your bowl. Absolutely agree. It just, with what I have going here, not really. Well, it is doable, I guess. On the banjo. Yeah, I guess I could slide this back on the rest. I could probably even flip the rest around. So there, I mean, this is the first time I've made this tool. I've done this freehand before, but I saw Gary's tool and was like, oh, well, I can't do that, but I can simulate that, and it works. So that's this is the, well, I don't have the tools to do that. Well, yeah, you can make them. That's kind of what I did. So what I do here at this point is measure. I'm dead on 7¼ inches. So that's 3 and, was it 3 and some 16ths is half of that.
3 5/8.
Right, 3 5/8. Yeah, somewhere in there. So I take my compass. Remember, I set that. This is where this comes in. 3 5/8. So I'm just going to set my compass at 3 5/8. And the reason I'm using the compass and not just trying to line up the blank is I'll miss. You get a lot more accurate circle if you figure out what your diameter is, so that you cut inside of that diameter, so that when you stack these to glue them, you're in the right place. And you can see we're dead on. That pencil line is just inside of the diameter of this outer piece. Now, another thing that I will tell you is, if you're doing something like a glue up like this, think about, rather than just stacking it the way it was, change it up, turn it 3/4, turn the next one 3/4, do something fun with, and make a little bit of a pattern or something. We'll see the glue up that I did here in a few minutes. I just turned it 90 degrees and it looks really cool. So that's something to think about. Or if you really like the grain, continue that same grain pattern. That works too. It's up to you. That's all your prerogative. Okay, so again, I colored that in. I'm not sure if you can see the black, and it fits in exactly. And there's little ridges from where I had that in the chuck before. So that just sits right in.
You got room to get your banjo out?
No, I'm clear now. I got room.
Got it.
That's just the first on this little lathe with this little throw. I've only got 6 inches from center to the rails. Wait. So with that little throw, that's just a limitation a small lathe has. But you'll see there's a article in the upcoming newsletter about a potential solution for that issue. So I want to move this slot out to where my tool is going to cut just inside of that line. Get you over here. Okay, so my slot is going to put the tip of my tool just inside of that line right there. But here's where watching Mr. Asher paid off. The first outer band is 45 degrees. The next is going to be 55 degrees. So we're going to swing this angle out. Come on. There we go. We're going to swing this angle out 10 degrees. So what I did was I just made myself a little jig that I can set on the bowl, on the blank, and line up my tool mount. And that'll get me at an angle of 55 degrees if I'm paying attention and trying to line it up correctly. And then again, I want that outer edge to be right there on the line. And I'll tighten everything down, and I should be able to cut this. That just doesn't look right. See, and this is where my brain and the maths have issues. So I was cursing at Steve for suggesting this project because my brain and maths. I even used the British phraseology, maths, not math.
Joaquin, that doesn't look right. That doesn't
look right.
It
doesn't. You are correct.
Can you measure it maybe some other way to make sure?
Yeah, I'll get my compass in here, which I have to eyeball, but yeah, we're too steep. We are too steep. Hang on a second. When your banjo gets caught up on your tool rest, don't forget that you can extend the quill and give yourself almost 2 inches more room. There we go. Line us up, 55. And a lot of this literally, you're right, Matt, eyeballing that, it was like, wait a minute, that's not quite on. So a lot of this without Gary's mathematical prowess, I'm just terrible with math. So a lot of this sometimes just ends up being getting your eyeball on it. Sometimes that instinct is why is that not?
Well, if it's any consolation, Joaquin, I'm good at math, and I try to trust my instincts, and they don't always work either. So I've got to measure exactly like you're doing. So
yeah,
getting the eyeball on it is the way to go.
Yeah, getting the eyeball on it is kind of. So we're going to line that. Okay, we're getting about 55. Now, again, the reason we're going to get 3 levels, but we're only going to get 2 rings out of this. His third is 65. The reason I can't do that is because I'm using a 1/4 inch wide tool. And as you'll see, this is going to, at a 1/4 inch wide, this is going to come all the way almost to, at 55 degrees, almost to the inside ring. Whereas if this tool was strong enough and I could cut with this is about the width of the tool that Gary uses. He is able to yet again come in with another ring and get 65 and not run into the middle because he hasn't cut off so much thickness. If you think about it, so you're taking a 1/2 inch out. That's a lot. That's the width of this piece of wood. Again, that it's taking out with the tool, with a 1/4 inch tool. So a thinner parting tool works better. I just don't have one that I trust to do this. So we're clear. I can see that edge of my tool is touching right there on the corner, right outside the pencil line. That's where I want it. Okay. And I'm at a little bit steeper angle. I'm at 55 degrees. Now I don't want to move this. I've got this locked down. I like the angle. I don't want to move this. I can turn a little bit faster now because I've got a thinner, a narrower piece. That's the less width you have, the faster it's safe to turn. So this inner ring will go a little bit quicker, but we're still running into some of the same issues we ran into turning the outer ring, especially because we have different densities of wood. And we should probably sharpen up real quick. So all these, all these things, all these little factors, the fact that my tool's so wide, offer the opportunity for design change and adjustment and learning. And I'm going to tell you, Gary's little tool. I think the video he did with the little tool was last year. That little tool, because you don't have all of this burden of the tool rest winging around. You've just got that little piece, that little metal piece that holds the tool. You can change the angle pretty much to any angle you want without having to deal with things like the tool rest not reaching far enough and stuff, because you can pivot that little tool. I think it's probably 2 or 3 inches wide rather than the whole 4-inch depth that we've got here. It's a really neat little tool. If I had the metalworking ability, I would have whipped one up, because it's just a cool little solution for this. But the first time I did this, I think I watched Billy's video. And the first time I did this, I just put tape on my tool rest at the angles and eyeballed it, and it worked. So obviously, because we got more speed, we're generating more heat. So we need to make sure we keep this clear. And another thing to think about too is you're cutting through wood glue. I use Titebond 3, and wood glue is very hard, and it does eat It does eat your blade. So that's just another thing to be aware of, is you are cutting through wood glue, and so you really need to pay attention to your blade sharpness.
Joaquin, would you like to see the tool and the rest? I do have them.
Sure.
Okay,
Can we
after
do
the
that?
demo, please.
Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll go get them.
Is that Gary? Are you here?
No, this is Ron.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe that little tool. I mean, it's a really neat, like, it's brilliant little tool. It's a cool little tool. So I'm glad somebody has it and can show it. So we're cutting real steep here, 55 degrees, and the last one at 65. If I had the space to do it, it's incredibly steep angle, but it gets us a rounded bottom bowl instead of a funnel, instead of a 45-degree funnel, which was why Gary developed the angles, because most bowls from a board are funnel shaped, I should say, or trumpet horn. Now you see we're generating a lot more heat. You really need to pay attention to that if you're running faster on the inner circles. Stop often, cool your tool, make sure that the wood's not really smoking. And honestly, if you start feeling nervous because you're getting a lot of smoke, slow your lathe down. Ain't nobody got you on a clock unless you're doing a live demo. So we're about at halfway depth. And I know that because I gave myself a little mark when I did this with the other demo piece, and that mark is still there. So I know we're about halfway where we need to be. I'm going to go ahead and sharpen again. I do still have a bit of a burr, but I can feel it starting to get a little softer. So we'll go ahead and sharpen again. But again, because you are turning a narrower piece, you can turn a little bit faster. Just be very conscious of the heat. There we go. We're getting nice shavings again. Heating up. Take a break for a minute. Make sure it's clear. Cool off the tool. Sharpen. Even though we're cutting a narrower circle, at this steep angle, we're actually moving almost twice as much wood as we did at 45 degrees. So we're using more blade. Three-quarters of the way there. Again, you really want to make sure that your cut is wider than your tool. When that friction just seems like it's making things too hot, clear everything, cool everything down. You'll see in a minute, just cutting the rings is what takes the longest in this project. Well, for me, it was doing math, but cutting the rings is what takes the longest in this project. That is eating that tool pretty fast. The heat doesn't help. Good. Should be able to make it all the way through now. Okay, we're getting close. Gonna go ahead and slow the lathe down. Again, down to around 600, just so that that's not spinning as wildly when it separates. Almost there. Now this is starting to be deep enough. I don't know if you can tell, but my shavings are actually balling up in there. That's going to create more friction. So it's really, really important to keep that clear. There we go. So if I had a thinner tool and was able to make the bands a little bit thinner, we could go a third or a fourth ring, which would be 65 degrees. We can't really do that with that 1/4 inch wide tool, but this still takes a 3/4 inch board and gives us an 1.5 inch deep bowl. We are finished with this. So let me show you this little tool real quick. All I did was take a block, cut it to about the same dimensions. I think it's 1/2 inch shorter than my box rest, but cut it to the, but 3/8 of an inch shorter than my box wrench, but cut it to the same dimensions just because of the way that my box rest, the way the rest is, I have a flat spot here so I could clamp it, but that's the tool. That's it. It's just 45 degrees in a block of wood. And I set the table saw at just over 2/3 of the depth of my tool, so that the tool still clears to top, and it's just a tiny bit wider than the tool, so that you can move it and cut your groove a little bit wider than the tool, so it doesn't bind up as easily. So we're done with that. And through the magic of television and the internet and editing,
and the British method of already having a piece halfway along.
exactly, we have the other half of the board already glued
Rachel
up.
Ray method.
So yeah, let me pull this out of the oven.
Yeah.
So
Can you smell that?
there are so many different ways to hold this bowl, and I thought very long and hard before I decided not to bring out my cold jaws. And there's a couple reasons for that. The main one being many turners. I just got cold jaws and I've been turning for more than 7 years. Many turners just don't have them, and especially many new turners don't have them. The other thing is I can't touch this rim very easily if I have cold jaws. So what I'm going to do is show you a friction drive method. I have this piece of oak that is my bowl bottom friction drive, permanently mounted to a faceplate. I probably will only ever take it off to replace this. And then I take and again, I learned this from Phil Anderson at Shady Acres Wood Shop. This is a fantastic method. So I forgot to tell you. So here, same thing as we did before, measure the width, set your center, draw your circle so that you can line it up so you can glue it. I use Tight Bond 3. When you have the lines, you can see, when you draw the line here, you can see where to put the glue on the circle. And then what I do is I take the, I have a piece of plywood that fits over the bed of my lathe. I set that piece of plywood down. I stack my bowls, or I stack my rings. I glue them. I set it down, and then I take another board and sandwich it, and then I clamp the 4 corners so that I have even pressure all the way around down to hold these, and then let the glue set overnight. There's probably 17 other methods to glue it up, but I found that that's the easiest to do. It takes 4 clamps. Oh, and then I put my bucket O cutoffs on top of that for weight, just to make sure that we have pressure on there so that glue will set, and then I just let it sit overnight. Tight Bond 3 is really good glue. So this is a shelf liner. Get these at the dollar store for $1. Rolls of them. You bring up your tail center. You've got your center on your little sacrifice block there. Bring up your tail center. Give yourself some pressure, and that is more than adequate. And I made that same mistake again. That's more than adequate to hold your bowl so that you can turn the outside, which we're going to do right now. Now, this is the fastest part of this project. Just getting your math figured out and parting your rings is what takes the longest. And this is where we may have our failure. So I'm warning you right now. Here's that band of cedar here. Here it is at almost 90 degrees. And here it is again here. And if this fails, it's probably going to fail right here in the middle ring where that cedar is. I'm going to do my best not to let it fail, but I'm warning you now. Again, this is just leftovers from another guy's shop. I was glad to take the free wood, but I would never stack cedar between hardwoods like this for a glue up. That's just, it was one of his first pieces. So I understand, or one of his early pieces, I understand. Another thing too, especially with that cedar, I don't know if you can see this. Do you see that it's oval? As soon as I parted this, by the time I got the third one done to glue it, it had gone oval on me. And this is 5 years old. It's dry as could be. So I'm pretty sure that's because of that band of cedar in there. So I've got a little bit of an oval shape to overcome. You can really see it there, but we are centered. And we have a roughly 1/2 inch thick blank from top to bottom. So we have room to work on that and to fix it. Get up to where you feel comfortable. I'm right at 800 RPM. I don't really see any need to turn that any faster. We're getting a little sliding, and I see why. So that's sliding on my bowl rest because I have my banjo extended all the way. So we'll bring the banjo in a little so we can get a bit of pressure on there. This relies on some pressure. This friction drive method relies on some pressure. That should do us. There we go. She's holding. So I figured since I had kind of this funky wide band that what we'd do is give it a bowl with an undercut rim, like so that you can fit your fingers under there and hold it. So the first thing I want to do is just true this edge. And it really did. Boy, it went oval on me. I promise that is not misalignment with the glue up. It went oval. Fogging up really, really bad here. Let's take a look at what's, oh, that's the, I've got a little bit of a long edge on my shelf liner that's flapping. Cool thing about this shelf liner, you can just tear it, get it out of your way if it's doing that so that it doesn't scare you. All right, now we can work on a little bit of shape here. So this is cross grain. So counterintuitively here, I'm coming from the outside in, but I am cutting into supported grain because I'm actually cutting up under the rim. I will turn the tool around and cut the other way, the typical way for turning the outside of a bowl here in a minute once I start to get to the point where we can make that meet. And I also want to think about thickness for the top. I could probably go a little bit deeper before I turn around and come back the other way to meet that. But I'm still, to get the shape that I'm working for with this, I'm cutting into supported grain. Light cuts, sharp tool. Even though I'm cutting with 4 or 5 different densities of wood, I'm still able to get a nice clean cut. So we got to get that little bit of leftover edge out of there. Not bad. Not bad. I'm going to reach in here and kind of check my thickness. And I'm going to start coming shallow here and doing my undercut. So we'll start at that outer edge and work our way back to where we want to turn that corner. All right, now we can come from the bottom here and just blend her all together. And a little bit of a ridge right there. That's going to turn right away. And we'll roll this edge. Bring that back. There we go. Around this shape a little bit more down here. give it a little bit. I've got geometrically, I have thicker piece of wood to work with here than I do here because I'm at such a steep angle. I'm cutting more across than in. So I can really mess with this, play with this, change this angle, give myself a foot, which I think is what we're going to do. Because there's just more wood because it's at that angle, that very low angle. So I can really kind of get in here and give myself some shape and some grace to that form and kind of get away from the funnel-like shape that we're used to seeing from a bowl and a board. And I'm sorry, I'm fogging up, so I can't actually see what I'm cutting. I got to lift my face shield. I apologize.
As far as we can tell, your face shield is on. You're good.
Yeah, well, it's not. And I do, again, I don't trust that piece of cedar any further than I could throw it. I actually turned a humidor, complete 8-inch deep cigar humidor, 6 inches wide. It was beautiful. I was buffing it with a paper towel and it exploded in my face. I don't trust Western red cedar any further than I can throw the tree in its entirety. So it makes me nervous. So here's the outside of the bowl. Obviously, we take a little time. We sand it up. Bob's your uncle. You've got a beautiful outside of a bowl with a nice shape, and it was 3/4 of an inch deep. I told you I'd get it in there. It was 3/4 of an inch deep, but we got it all the way to 1.5 inches or whatever 3/4 times 3 is. I don't math at all. I'm terrible at math. Okay. So, if there was any question as to whether or not CA glue would hold that, there's your answer. It does a good job. We'll go ahead and get back to the chuck. By the way, I use that method to finish bottoms of the bowls too. Again, learn from Gary and Phil Anderson. I really suggest if you have not watched either of those two turn bowls, it's a good time. They're both very entertaining. Phil turned some very challenging natural edge pieces, and they both take the time to describe how to do things like part off the tenon on the bottom of a bowl. I did the same thing between 1 and 1. I made a little mark. Let me move you overhead. Between 1 and 1, I made a little mark so that I can line this up as close to exact as possible. With this blank, it really didn't matter because this sucker went goofy oval on me before I even got it glued. There was a lot of stuff going on in the wood here. Now, we are working with, we'll get to about 3/16 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit more, but we're working with a fairly thin bowl, so we really need to be careful out here. Just be aware you're working with a fairly thin piece. It can be a bit heavier and thicker with the 45 degree. Hang on a second here. It can be a bit heavier and thicker with the 45 degree, but you don't, the reason these bowls turn so fast is because there's no wood. You're just smoothing out the edges basically of your cutout of your rings. There's just all the wood's gone. So again, we had a little bit of a cove here so that we can get our fingers in, so we can round this over, cutting downhill into supported grain. Look at that. That might go on me. Cutting downhill into supported grain, so we're going to come from the inside out here. You're in the wrong view. We're going to come from the inside out here, roll this, and then come back normal and come down inside and cut the inside of our bowl. You'll see little ridges. If you had more layers, you'd have more little ridges. Really, all we're doing is eliminating those, getting us a nice smooth surface, and then coming down into the bottom of the bowl here. It's not a lot of turning. But you need to be very aware of the fact that especially if it's a glued up board like this. If it's a single board, you have a lot less challenge as far as density of grain and direction of grain. I've never been the one to take the easy way out. So I decided, hey, let's go for it and see what we can do with this cutting board. Get back around. So this is 3/4, well, a little bit less than 3/4 of an inch thick, but we have 3/4 of an inch to work with here. And I do want this rim to be consistent with the thickness of the rest of the bowl. So I need to take this down a little bit more. But also you can stop and look at densities. You can see, let's see if you guys can see here. So right here, I've got just at 5/8 of an inch. But right here, I'm at 1/4 of an inch. That's how much oval this piece of wood went on me and flexed. It really, really flexed. So that's always, especially if you're turning something like maple, you always have a distinct possibility of having that wood move an incredible amount. Here I've got 5 different species, or 4, 5, 6 different species of wood, all different densities, with that cedar thrown right in the middle just to make things challenging. So we really have a lot of movement in that wood. All right, let's take a look at that. Not bad. So this is flexing a lot. I don't know if you could see, but we're actually getting a lot of vibration here. Again, different densities of wood, different hardnesses. So I'll teach you a trick I learned from Sam Angelo. He uses a piece of leather, but a piece of 3M white works really well. And you can just set your hand behind there, and that actually helps prevent friction. And it's not going to mess up any of your sanding or your finish. And you can steady that. Okay, that doesn't have a possibility of wrapping around your fingers or anything, but you can steady that, and you can help alleviate that chatter a little bit when you're coming across it with, you've got a real thin piece and it wants to move and flex on you. That just helps you get a little bit more balance. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, don't do it. But it really can help steady that kind of a weirdness, especially when you have different woods, different grains, different densities. We're really pulling. I mean, this, whew, it's amazing how much this sucker moved on me. Try some shear scraping here. If we can get that under control so we can get the bevel in there and get a cut. There we go. I should be able to pick up a cut. Take my time. And we're entering that weak spot where that cedar is probably going to blow apart on us. I absolutely will not be shocked if that happens, which is why I keep warning you. And it pays at this point to stop and feel. Good grief, that flexed. Holy cow, that moved a lot. I still have room. I got space in there, but I'm getting a lot of vibration because of that, all those different densities of wood.
There's no center mass to hold it together.
I'm sorry?
No center mass to hold it together. A lot of flexing.
There's nothing in here. It's all gone. And especially, again, that piece of cedar, I know this was one of his early pieces that blew up, but Bud never would have stuck cedar in here. Not in a million years. Stop a lot and check your thickness, especially when it flexes. I mean, this piece flexed so much. It's crazy. stop and check your thickness. It's going to make it, but this is going to be a thin bowl. That's another challenge with this, especially at these steeper angles. You will have a very light, very thin bowl at the end of this. And when it flexes like this one did, that makes it even more challenging. Excuse me a minute. I need to change my drawers. That air compressor kicked on. I
No, we
thought the
can't
bowl
hear
was
it.
going on me. Woo! My air compressor just kicked on and scared the tar out of me. Always the most inopportune moment. All right, I've got this little gap here where it flexed on me. This sucker moved an incredible amount, and I'm trying to even that out. That might be one of the very rare occasions where the 80 grit bowl gouge comes into play. I don't know that I trust with that piece of cedar in there. I do not know that I would trust a scraper in there. I have this sucker flexed lengthwise, and you can see where it's wider out here than it is here. It's just, that wood moved an incredible amount, especially knowing that it's dry and been dry for years. There we go. We're almost through the scary part into the pretty simple part here.
Hey, Joaquin, maybe
Check
a
the
fresh edge
thickness.
on your gouge.
Check the thickness again.
Joaquin, fresh edge on your gouge.
Yeah. Not a bad idea. Give me just a second.
You got this, Joaquin. Ain't nothing but a thing, man.
If the cedar wasn't there, we'd be done. But I just don't trust red cedar at all. I have had nothing but horrific experiences with red cedar in anything but a spindle turning. Red cedar
You're
makes
gonna
really
change
cool
your
hair
mind on that
sticks.
red cedar, Joaquin. You'll be all right.
Say again.
It'll change your mind on that red cedar. You'll be all right. It'll buff out.
Yeah. But this thing is still moving. We're getting a lot of movement. Let me try something just for giggles. Steve sent me this Crown Cryo scraper. Let's see if we can just get a very light scrape and blend this one little spot. That's better. That's much better.
Yeah.
Still have
I
a
held my
little
breath the
bit.
whole time.
So I'm sorry, Billy.
I said I held my breath the whole time.
it did the job. It did the job. And at this point, honestly, from here, because of the cedar, I'm not going to push it because nobody wants to see an explosion live. That is a case for the 80 grit bowl gouge, if ever there was one. All right, we're going to go ahead and get here into the bottom. We have 3/4 of an inch of depth here, so we can remove about 1/2 of an inch. Not a lot of wood to deal with, and most of that in the center is walnut, so it should cut pretty easy and pretty quickly. So the big trick with this is stages. You really turn this in stages because you don't have any center mass to stabilize your rim. You really just have to take it a little tiny bit at a time. Really work it in stages. And really come flat. Well, you Brits would probably agree with me at this stage. Richard Raffin would just come right in here with a scraper and finish it that way. Not a bad idea when you're working with challenging grains and patterns here. We're almost there. Go ahead and switch to my bottom feeder and smooth that out a little bit. It's just a traditional English grind at 60 degrees. You know, it's funny, Billy, you said you held your breath the entire time I was using the scraper. So did I. All right, let's see what we got going on here. I think we're pretty good. Not bad shape. I've definitely got some challenges here because of the differing grains. So this is an appropriate time for your scraper. We'll bring out the big gun. She's my favorite. This is Babs. I'll let you imagine what the acronym means. And I'm not going past that joint. You can't make me. I think we've got a nice bottom on there. We do. Okay, sanding, obviously. One thing to think about when you're sanding, if you've got different woods, different grains, cedar, is each of these woods has a different density. So if you sand it too hard, if you're really in there and you're really working it, the cedar is going to sand deeper than the piece of what's next to it. The piece of I'm pretty sure that's sapele. The piece of sapele next to it, that's denser grain, and that's not going to sand as deep as the cedar is. So you really need to pay attention when you're sanding. A lot of people, if they have blended wood like this, do it by hand. They don't do it with the lathe turning. So really, really pay attention to what you're doing with the sandpaper. This is the kind of thing where you can get too excited with sanding and go right through the side or something, because this is softer than this and softer than this. This is a little bit more dense than this. That's the same as that, you know, and then you've got your maple over here. So think about it when you're sanding and pay attention to it. But what I want to show you finally is
That maple's got some curl in it.
It does. It's got a little curl, and it's pretty. I mean, there's pretty stuff going on in here. There's curl in the maple. Tiger or zebra wood is always fun. Although the first time I turned zebra wood, the guy who gave me the blank, I said, I've never turned shaggy wood. He said, I've never heard it described that way, but you're not wrong. Okay, so what do we do with this? Now, usually I would go do this on my workbench. But what I want to show you is that you don't have to turn this away, and you can reuse. I've probably been using this block for 2 years. Using this method, you can reuse your your sacrifice blocks a long time before you finally give up on them and tell them that it's time to retire. So I learned this again from Lyle Jameson. He hates chucks and he turns every bowl with a waste block on a faceplate. Flat side of your chisel against the bowl. Otherwise, when you hit it, you can actually cause that to dig in, and you want it to dig into your waste block, not your bowl. Find a spot where there shouldn't be a gap, but there might be a little bit of a gap there. And you should be able to shear it off, except the cedar. It failed. That should shear off. Let's see if I can get it to do it on this side. I knew this bowl was going to come apart. I knew it. I knew that was going to happen. So usually a sharp blow parts that right off, but it's going to make a liar of me. Where did we split? We split in the walnut.
Yep.
Yeah,
the
that cedar held.
Yeah, it did. I'm really surprised. We split in the walnut, and I'm pretty sure that's maple. That's weird.
Cedar said, "You've been talking shit about me the whole demo." I'm
right. You've been talking about how much you hate cedar. Let's see if we can get this to shear. There it goes. So that sheared right off. If that hadn't cracked on me. The zebra wood. Look at that. The zebra wood's the real culprit.
Recovery room. Fix it.
Recover, fix it.
Oh,
Actually, you know what I want to do is
CA
put
on
it on
some sawdust.
Right. What I want to do is put it on a bandsaw and cut it in half. And I'll share pictures with you guys after I do that tomorrow. I have to unhook everything to plug the bandsaw in or it kills my power. But I'll cut it in half and I'll show you. You can see that where the different layers, where the glue is, and you can see kind of some of the challenges with the different angles. So I'll do that and I'll put that in the Facebook page. But usually that just shears well, and it's better when you shear that if you're not on your lathe, you're not hanging off the edge of your lathe. It works a lot better on the workbench with a face vise, a front vise, and I just slide the bowl down in, and this is on the rim of the vise, and just pop it, and it should shear right off. So there's that. Wow, that's a pretty impressive crack. Look at that. Not bad.
You know, that's totally fixable, man.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I got a different project to work on to finish tomorrow. Anyway, there's in rough the bowl and a board. Very rough. Sanding. Again, one of the big challenges sanding is different densities of wood. So it's something to pay attention to. And I definitely was working uphill with this board in particular. I have the rings from the other one. Those are perfectly doable to glue up. So what I may do is glue those up and turn an actual second bowl that is a success, because I'm not rushing to fit in a time. But any questions on that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Joaquin.
Yes.
I have a question on your angles when you're cutting.
Yes.
Now, could you reverse that and go the angle towards your tail spot as to go towards the headstock doing your cutting, and you could make your final angle more of a deeper angle?
You can if you have room to get back.
Yeah, the problem is if you're cutting towards your headstock, you got to get way over here. You got to get way over here. Well,
no. On your first one, it was way out. Your ring was real big.
Yeah, but ring was real big. Okay.
No, the other way. Go from your headstock out. Your headstock out. That way.
Okay, but
each time you cut it, your angle of your tool will change.
That's okay. I see what you're saying. Let's stick this between centers for a second. I see what you're saying. That's an interesting idea. I get exactly
Jim
what you're
said
saying.
that earlier in the chat.
That's an interesting idea.
And I wasn't sure what he was talking about.
So what
But
you're
I think
saying,
that's what Jim meant.
actually, let's do it. Let's do it this way. There's a better way to do this. Obviously, I can't make this spin. It's too big. But
Yeah.
what you're talking about is coming in, and I'm going to cut 45 degrees.
Right.
I'm going to cut 45 degrees this way and squirt the ring off that way. And
Right.
then I'm going to come steeper and cut 55 degrees this way.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Now, see this is why clubs like this are great. I've watched, like I said, I watched the Pop in 1947. I've watched Billy do this, and everybody does it the other way.
Yeah.
The collective experience
By
here.
doing it that way, you would save more project.
Yeah,
Plus, you give more rings.
yeah, you'd keep more of your wood. You definitely have a better option as far as your variability of your.
Yeah. But that's only
that's-
on the cut. That's only on the cutting. Now the regular regular turning would be the other way around.
Yeah, obviously you'd still do it the normal way where you turn the outside of the bowl and then the inside of the bowl. But that's a really cool idea. So now I've got to play with it. What do you play with it?
You give your wife some leather gloves and she catches the ring for you.
He ain't got about a hay bale.
It works great. He loves catching rings.
That's exactly right, Jim. That's exactly right.
You got
There we
it.
go.
Having met your wife, I bet she would just stand right out there and catch those as they came out. That's a
And
cool
since your
idea. I
banjo-
like that.
Ceiling.
You just have to have enough overlap.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously you'd have to pay attention to marking. You'd have to pull it off each time, line it up, draw your circle, and make sure you mark it so that you have enough overlap to glue each layer. And if you look, you've got, now again, with that thicker parting tool, you can see how much I took off, but you basically, using the 1/4 inch parting tool, you have a 1/2 inch overlap between each layer. And it's actually wider. That's wrong. Here's a 1/2 inch, and I'll have a 1/2 inch overlap when I cut it at 45 degrees on the first ring. Okay. Here I have a 1/2 inch. That's my 1/2 inch. That's my overlap. Here at 55, I probably have, well, let's trace it out real quick. I'm just eyeballing this so we can see but that's at a steeper angle, still taking out a 1/4 inch or 1/2 an inch of width, 1/4 inch on each side, but I've got almost an inch of overlap there. So I have more space to glue and more bond here at that steeper angle than I do here at the first cut, which was at 45 degrees angle. So more real estate, which means you have more leeway when you're shaping that, when you're hollowing when you're shaping it on the outside and hollowing it, you've got a lot more leeway as far as what you do in this angle right here, because you've got so much more bulk of wood at that extreme angle. So that's really cool too. You still have to trace it out and make sure that you're going to cut it the right place. And again, the thinner parting tool makes a huge difference. Gary got 3 full rings, so it was 4 times thicker with a 1 inch board, because he had such a thin parting tool. And the way he built his little jig, you have an infinite amount more control of the angle than I do with my little box rest adaptation. The point of me doing the box rest adaptation is I don't have time to order a jig, or I don't have the money to order a jig. You can make something. All of us have the tools we need, even if you're sitting there with a handsaw and a bench vise, to make something that would hold that so that we could cut it. And that's why I wanted to do it that way. I would really love to just go out and order Gary's jig, but I think it's more meaningful, especially for new turners who don't have the tools, to learn that they can build the tools.
Agreed.
Yeah, from
Which is
Gary's
what I
video, it almost looks like he's 3D printed some of them.
He may be. I need to go back and watch the video again. I was researching angles more than his tool. So I really want to go back and watch the video again and learn a little bit more about his tool, because I was really paying attention to the angles because my math skills are horrible. So, and I am unapologetic about that. I have bad math skills.
I built mine and it wasn't that difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we see it, please?
Right here.
Nice.
Well, let me unmute myself.
You're
Okay,
no, we hear
am.
you. Talk again. We lost you. There you are.
go. You buy your tool post for your tool rest.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a 1 3/4 by 1 3/4 block of aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
And
Ron, we can't see the top there. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, there we go.
You cut it out like that. Here is the parting tool. Let me see if I can get the printing down. That's a Robert Sorby.
That's
let me turn around.
It's the same one I'm using, the 1/4 inch.
No, this is 1/8.
Oh, is that an 1/8? Oh, nice.
That's an 1/8. And
Nice.
when you set it up, it sets right in that groove. Just like that. It'll set right there. Now
Very
the key is to have your piece as close up to here as you can, so you get very little vibration.
Yeah, you saw as I was turning, I had that little block as close to there as I could get it, because that you're moving further and further off the tool rest the deeper you get in and you're cutting that angle.
Exactly.
So
now what I also did is I made my templates up. So when you hold your template, here's the templates that I made. They're just floor tile, and you just hold them right flat against your piece, and set your gauge right to it, and there you go.
Yep.
Now I use 45, 55, and 60.
Right.
That gives me a little bit of an OG.
Yeah, exactly. And I was trying to do that, but with the 1/4 inch wide parting tool, I just did not have the room to get that third ring cut.
Yeah, and the first one I did with when I seen Gary's video is it just got me going, and he also does a video on building a glue press to glue all these pieces together, which I also built, and that was very easy. Here's the first piece that I did.
Oh, that is lovely. Very nice. Very nice.
With a little inlay.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I posted this I don't know, a year or two back. And this is the top of an old toilet seat I found laying around.
Yeah, Billy, was it you that turned a piece of plywood that did it? Or was it, it might've been Gary. Somebody
I have not used plywood, no.
Okay, somebody did one with plywood and it looked really cool. It really looked interesting.
Well, I've been thinking about that because my son's in flooring, and I have access to all kinds of hardwood flooring.
That 3/4 inch heavy duty plywood would make a gorgeous bowl from a board.
But yeah, this aluminum, you buy this aluminum by the block, it's not expensive, and you can cut it with your bandsaw, hacksaw, bandsaw.
Yeah, you say put it on your bandsaw and
angle grinder.
Yeah, angle grinder.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways.
Not an angle grinder.
I did a lot with a hacksaw.
Yeah. It's a cool
idea.
It's a neat adaptation. It's a neat adaptation. Definitely.
This is one I did.
There you go.
There we go. Beautiful, Billy.
And yeah, this is one I did. And Joaquin, ash juniper.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Nice.
It's
That's
dusty.
nice.
It needs to be polished up, but this one is my wife. She won't let me sell it. But yeah, ash juniper,
Don't dust it every day.
walnut, oak, African mahogany.
Beautiful.
I remember
maple.
you
There's all
making
kinds of stuff in
were
it.
you making
I
that,
like
Bill?
I like how you rotated your pattern a little
And-
bit with each ring. That's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rings. And it's got that shape because I used multiple angles.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. You see, you did the
Thank you.
math. My brain, I can't tell you how
No, I
long it
didn't.
took. I'll tell you what, I've sat and cut these. I probably cut these 14 times. They drove me crazy. I couldn't figure out how to translate my small part sled or my I got the Rockler small part sled with the
Miter gauge.
the miter gauge. Thank you. With the miter gauge on it. And so I'm cutting on the left side, but I need to use it on the right side. And I still haven't figured out how to flip it over and get the right angle. My head won't do it. But I could sit here and spit the Pythagorean theorem and cut triangles for you all day long. I don't understand how I'm not translating it to the lathe. My brain just isn't doing it.
Well, this was my first
and
effort
angles.
at doing a bowl from a board.
Ooh,
Pretty.
lovely.
Yeah, that's nice.
Well,
How many rings?
That's gorgeous, Ruby.
Crazy, Ruby.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
I don't have that much patience.
Those were what, half-inch, Ruby?
Not
About that.
a little under a half-inch.
Gorgeous, Ruby.
Very nice.
That's really pretty.
And so did you cut it? Did you cut at 45 on all of them?
Pretty much.
So see, the reason I ask is because look at the shape. You can still, even with 45, you can get some shape in your bowl. You're not the first one I did just looked like a triangle, but I realized I had, a 3/4 inch wide bands at 45 because of the way I cut it. You can get some shape. And the second one I did at 45 degrees just had a lot more because I didn't get scared by the fact that I cut them all at 45 degrees and stacked them. It had a lot more form to it.
Oh, God, I got a cramp in my leg.
Yeah, the overlap changes as you change the degrees.
Yeah.
Right. You just went muted, Joaquin.
The steeper you have that angle, the more low overlap you have. So at 55, you saw it was an inch instead of half an inch at 45. At 60, it's probably, if I'm thinking the math right, you're going to get 1 1/4 inch, maybe 1 1/2 inch. Is really going to get a wider, and so you're going to have a lot more leeway because you have more material there. It's just at a steeper angle.
Flip over to Mr. Duxbury. He's got a couple of those bowls from a board. Maybe he can throw some insight as well. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do a screen share here. Huh. I selected it. I don't have a place to. I don't know what I got here.
Uh-oh.
Anyway, I do a lot of this. Can you see that?
Here it comes. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Can you see that?
Oh,
Go ahead,
boy.
Jim. We can see it.
But, I do a lot of this. I bought a Ringmaster. Ringmaster made a thing a jig with cutters on it. It's kind of like a shopsmith. People buy them and they make 2 bowls and then they don't know what to do with it. So you can pick them up pretty cheap. I remade it to fit my Powermatic. It's a piece of junk on a shopsmith. But anyway, this is a bowl from 2 different kinds of wood, cherry and maple.
Which go together really, really well.
It's
nice.
Well, there's math to it. I don't want to tell you that. But anyway, if you understand the math, this is this is a special kind of board, but it's the same kind of thing.
Mhm.
This is the board that is layered diagonally at a slant and then made into this.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's way more math than my brain can do.
Well, it's if you take the width of the board and the depth of the cut, the part you're moving in, this is about almost a 1-inch board, and the cuts are a 1/2 inch apart.
Mhm.
If you put the 1 inch over a 1/2 inch and do a tangent angle on your phone's got a scientific calculator, it'll give you the exact angle. These are like, in fact, it's ridiculous. It's like 36.278 degrees or something.
Jim, you just broke my brain.
Anyway,
I just heard, and you take your calculator and wah, 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 wah.
yeah.
Too complicated for me.
No. Anyway, you have to turn this really fast because it's like a big screw and you'd fall on the floor if you didn't do it.
You get dizzy.
You got it. You can't stand up. I didn't know there
That
was
is gorgeous.
This is the same thing done in 2 different kinds of wood. These are all different. I got a whole bunch of these. It's much easier to stagger these. You learn this the hard way. If you try to glue these up straight, you screw it up. You see where that one's missing there? If you stagger these and make them turn as they go up, if you're off a millionth of an inch, it doesn't show.
It expands exponentially.
Yeah. This
That
is
one is
with just 3 different pieces. People would have a hard time figuring out how to do this. And
I can understand that.
you can make lefts and rights or positives and negatives and all that sort of thing. Anyway, I got a whole bunch of these things. This is done. You glue all your scrap up. You lay all your scrap down and glue it all up. And
got another idea.
Right? Yeah. Now that one I can do. That's not a lot of math.
No. This is straight-sided.
Another rabbit hole.
This is straight-sided, and the nice part of a ringmaster is the cuts come in from both sides. And I wasn't kidding. My wife stands there with leather gloves and grabs the rings. We've done a whole bunch. We've done a whole bunch of these, but
that's the best.
Yeah,
I love it.
Anyway, there's a whole bunch of these things.
Beautiful.
But these are all straight-sided. I also do.
Well, another thing about the bowl and the board project is if you don't have access to logs, but you can take an old dresser apart.
Yeah.
You've got 3 or 4 bowls.
Yeah.
Also, instead of a glue block on the inside here, I drill I think it's 1 3/8 hole. This is called I think PSI has them. It's called a clock. When you made clocks, you drilled an 1 3/8 hole and you put it over this expanding chuck.
Right.
God, that thing holds. And you're going to turn the center out of this anyway, so you just put it over this and you can turn inside and outside.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's what they look like. Here again, see, this is the thickness of the board, and then the width of the cut. This is the width of the cut.
Right.
If you put the thickness of the board over the width of the cut, I think
that gives you the angle. Yeah.
Where'd I go?
My brain. I'm still
You're there.
My brain's still spinning on that.
Anyway, it's I don't know how many of these I got.
Wow.
Ooh.
That'd
make you cross-eyed.
What's in the bottom?
This is what happens when you glue it up. You start out with a square. This is about 1.5 inch square. And you glue 2 pieces of maple to it. And then you sand off the sides and you glue 2 pieces of cherry to it. And you sand off those sides and you two pieces of walnut to it. You sand that off and you keep building it out.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you end up with a square. And that's what it looks like on a square.
That's dizzying. That is dizzying. Look at, especially the shot from the bottom. That's dizzying. That is beautiful.
This is what happens when you start out with a triangle.
Man.
I know. I drink a little sometimes. And
Jim, got any trapezoids?
anyway.
I can understand why, Jim.
Show us the trapezoid.
Yeah. Where's the Pentagon? Oh,
This is another one that's screwed up.
that's beautiful.
Wow.
That is gorgeous. Love it.
I'm getting dizzy without drinking anything.
This is just two color.
for sure.
I had a guy wanted two color. He likes black and white or dark and light. So
That's beautiful.
this went to the Bahamas somewhere.
My gosh.
Nice. These are the perfect shape for, I mean, a lot of people, oh, you turned a funnel. These are great fruit bowls. They're perfect because the funnel shape forces all the apples up. It forces it to mound and look really pretty. I don't think people understand the functionality of that shape.
Jane, you're going to have to cut me off. I got two black screens. I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
Kick me out. I'll record.
We still see you.
Well, let's see if this works. Let's jump over to Joaquin. He's got one.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So I took two boards and I did a dovetail and then made them out. Now you can tell I didn't know what I was doing. I should have went a little bit deeper on that so I'd get the same width on these. But
Yeah, this still looks great.
I had no idea what I was doing. Someday I want to redo this, but
that's beautiful.
That is look better than a lot of flat work makers.
That's absolutely unique. That is beautiful.
Yeah. There's only one I've done so far, but I want to redo it again some other time if I ever get a chance.
Love it.
Cool.
That, see, now I'm getting ideas because I want to start learning to cut dovetails.
And I did them. I did it on the router table. I did, So.
Joaquin, let me ask you a question, since my name is also Joaquin, and that's of Spanish origin and Mexican origin. Where's your name from?
It's Cherokee Indian.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And then again, I think it might be something in Illinois. You hear Waukesha. There's a bunch of things that start with W-U-K up in Illinois.
Yeah.
But
gotcha.
Wabash.
Okay. Awesome. Nice. Thank you. I was curious because I'm like, well, I've never seen it spelled that way.
I really had a lot of fun with it because I live in South Texas.
The military was interesting. I'm so used to people not saying my name right. It's not even funny. Listen, gents, I appreciate the opportunity, but the temperature is dropping really fast out here and my layers are starting to fail me. I need to bail. I'm getting
right on,
see my breath.
Thank you
all very much.
Great job.
Excellent demo tonight. And
Thanks for the demo. Love it.
Thank you.
Definitely
Very
creativity bug for many.
Very
well.
enjoyable.
That's really all I hope to do is inspire somebody to go do it better.
You believe me, very enjoyable evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Joaquin.